Hello, Andy.
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
It's a great honor to speak with you. And we met a few months ago, but I'm seeing your work. I've been reading a lot of your articles. This thing, Strong First, breaking muscle as well.
Yeah.
And I've seen all the videos of actually breaking one record after the other.
Yeah.
And we met at the Brits, I think, a few months ago.
Yeah, we did.
And looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks as well.
Yeah, that's it. Next week on Saturday.
Yeah, I cannot wait for that. And also, I would love you to tell me what you think is going to be the first three.
That's going to be, I think this year's British is going to be a bit of a mix-up. I think Pyro Dwyer is going to be up there. And Tom Stoltman, you can never write him out.
Nope.
Adam Bishop's always in the mix, always consistent. This year we've got Andy Black, Mark Steele's coming in. And the events this year are a little bit different out there. There's not a lot of static. It's more endurance with the shield carry coming back, the axle for reps, the bag toss.
I haven't seen that for a while.
Yeah, mistakes can be made quite easily on these events.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the past as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be really interesting. I cannot wait. So who's Andy Bolton? Besides the part of the first guy that actually did 1,000-pound deadlift, you've broken so many other records, but who's Andy Bolton?
Yeah, well, Andy Bolton is known as the powerlifter, but he started off in track and field, age 11.
Wow.
100 metres, 200 metre sprinting champion, got invited to race at Crystal Palace, Leeds City champion. Couldn't afford to go to Crystal Palace because back then we didn't have a lot of money. I mean, all the running spikes and the equipment. So we didn't have a sponsorship. I mean, I was 11 to 13 years old, Mum and Dad couldn't afford to send me down there. So then I moved into rugby league, age 13. Played rugby league from 13 to 17, or just before my 18th birthday. Did well in that. I was fast, I was strong. We're going to get signed for Leeds or Featherstone. We're looking at me. To be honest, I found the training great, but I want gelling with a team, with the team mentality, because I were always the first one to train in, the last one off the pitch, put all the work in, and guys were just, they were missing sessions and then coming and playing on a weekend. And I just found it, not everybody seemed to be working as hard as me, to be honest. So
hard to be a part of that team because it's not actually a team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is. It's tough. All it is, it's at that age as well. It's just, you've just got 11, 13 individuals, all want to do their own thing, really. But, in any team, any pro sports now, you get the players who put the work in and the players who don't. Same with anything. But, if it's just frustrating when you've got that sort of mindset. You want to be the best and you rely on other people to be the best.
Genetics and talent are important, but always consistency and hard work,
Yeah, definitely.
Off.
Yeah. So from that, I asked my mum and dad, can I join the gym? Back then, you wasn't allowed to join the gym till 18 years old. It wasn't like today. You just walk. Then the gyms weren't like pure gyms. They are now. It was heavy, dirty, messy.
Pumping iron.
Big older men, you know what I mean? They were hardcore. As a young kid walking in there, were quite intimidating. So my dad took me down at 18 years old to a gym in Leeds, and it just boomed from there, to be honest. I mean, I didn't know much about deadlifts or powerlifting, just saw people squatting, tried squatting, I was strong straight away. But my first love was going to be bodybuilding because I didn't know anything about powerlifting.
Oh, wow.
18 years old, it was all bodybuilding, so I wanted to be a bodybuilder. I think I squatted 200 kilos my first time squatting. And I pulled a guy called Tony Henry, got me, he was in some power cleans and some deadlifts, and he asked me to join him. And I joined him and I pulled 260 first time I trained. Now, people talk about this to this day, how strong I was, but if you remember, I was a sprinter from 11 years old. I played rugby league for 6-7 years. Now, in rugby league training, even though we didn't do any weight training, we were putting lads on his backs and running up hills, hill sprints, carrying lads, picking them up, running up hills, so many sprints and bodyweight stuff. So I was primed for the gym anyway. It wasn't like I just got off my couch and gone training and being that strong. That's what people don't realise. So strong, started bodybuilding, competing in my first bodybuilding show age 20. But while I was dieting, a group of powerlifters started training in our gym. And we got chatting and they saw me train, noticed how strong I was. And then he said, when you finish your diet, come and join us. So I did. I mean, as soon as the diet were over on that stage, I loved the bodybuilding being on the stage, I must admit. It was the biggest buzz. But the diet, losing 4 or 5 stone in 12 weeks, I just couldn't see myself doing this.
It's hardcore.
It was very... and also, when you look back at the pictures, you realise genetically, I wasn't never going to be a Mr. Olympia. Big waist, didn't have peaked arms, big back, strong legs, but lean. They weren't very big.
I saw some of the pictures about thick torso, really thick. Yeah. Because I mean, from the side on, my biggest, I was very thick that way. But it wasn't great for bodybuilding. So we got into powerlifting and it just boomed from there. That's when Andy Bolton, the powerlifter, come of age, to be honest, age 20 years old. First competition, squatted 270, benched 155 and deadlifted 335 for a Yorkshire record. Wow.
And then it just went up from there, just kept on competing. But then I started powerlifting age 20. I won World Championships in 2001, 91, 92, 93. 3 times world champion, WPC. And then I got invited to Strongman. I got a call from David Webster and Doug Edmonds, and I come to Strongman. So then I did Strongman for 5-6 years, to 99. Competing against Magnus Magnuson, Manfred Herbel, Gary Taylor, all the best in the world back then. And I held my own, I was always top 8.
That's big.
So I did well. I mean, I had no events to train on, really, until a couple of years I managed to get down to Sheffield to train with Jamie Reeves for a couple of years. So Jamie showed me a lot of stuff at Strongman.
Another legend.
Yeah, definitely. He was only local to me, a 20-minute drive away, you see.
Oh, wow.
It was good, yeah. So that was up until 99. Docklands. Me and Bill Pittett were first and second, going to go to the TV stages the next year. That's for the first time Britain's Strongest Man were going to go back on TV, Alton Towers. Me and Bill were way ahead of Glenn Ross. I think Glenn Ross was 20 points behind us going to the last event. So it was me and Bill all the way through. I managed to snap my bicep on the last event. So that put me out of Strongman. And then I met a guy called Brian Batcheldor. Yeah. Back then, who brought Kazmaier over way back. He knew John Paul, Gary, he worked with all these top guys.
Brian
he was. And me and Brian have become great friends. We're still friends to this day. He helped me out a lot, did Brian, over the years, a lot. And he got me back into powerlifting. He asked me to come back to powerlifting. He'd look after me, help me with things. And then he took me from 2000, 2001, right up to next 7, 8, 9 years were world breaking, record after record after record. And that's how it started.
You see differences because, you talked about, you did sprints, you did a lot of volume, you did all that brought you actually to be like a really strong lad when you first doing 200 kilos. What have you seen all these years, like all those decades on training? Because everybody's trying to find that kind of magic way of training.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of your articles about, talking about Bulgarian volume. If you do it, you're not going to have a life.
You don't.
And
you don't.
What's like the quintessence of training, let's say, for optimizing strength, and what's your take on all these years?
Yeah, well, for me, it's whatever plan you do, you've got to be able to sustain that for to get strong. I mean, Bulgarian. If you were to train 5 days a week, and I could say, I mean, I talk about this when I do seminars and stuff. If you train if I could tell you you're going to train 5 days a week. If you can put 100% effort into all them workouts, you're going to get stronger. You are going to get stronger. But how many people in the world, honestly, can walk into a gym and train 100% committed 5 days a week with the life going on, the home life, family life, work? It's impossible. You might do it for 2 or 3 weeks, a few months, then you might miss a session. then you're catching up with that session. And I figured out early, I had a life outside of powerlifting. Yeah, I might have been thinking about it all the time and reading about it when I wasn't training, but I only spent 3 days in the gym. So my first thing was only do something I can sustain. And the next thing is not to tear my body up. I don't want to. I did tear my body up in the early years, but luckily not to the point where I got injured. And I quickly learned off the back of that. And I figured out with the rugby background, the speed, the strength, to belong in this game, you've got to be patient for one. Strength is not going to come fast. You've got to not do loads of things at once. Pick a small few and then work on them. If they get stronger, if I were getting stronger comp to comp, I'd keep everything the same. If anything,
if it works, keep it.
Yeah. And people say, oh, yeah, I'm going to have this on. And I get into that mentality now with being older. Some things work. I think, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back and change that. I think, no, hang on a minute. No, it's worked. Why would you change something? And then what happens then? People change and they go so far out of what's made them strong in the first place. They don't know what they're doing. So I kept to the same thing. If it were working, I kept it. If it wasn't working, I'd find out. I'd talk to people that I trusted, and we'd figure a way out. We'd figure something out, and I'd change a small part of that. And then we'd work with that. If that didn't work, give it a few months, because you don't just give it a week or two, give it a few months. If it doesn't work, change it again. But rather than changing everything, just change small parts. And then over the years, I figured out speed, pulling. At my strongest, I could pull 600 pounds deadlifts, and I could have high pulled it to here. But off the back of that, I went to competitions and pulled 420 kilos. So that obviously this happened over time.
I keep what you said about patience, and you need to be patient if you want to be strong. If you can dive into that. If you take it biologically, yes, because you need so many adaptations for your ligaments, your tendons, your muscles actually to take all that. But you said now again, speed. So I come to you and I say, look, Andy, I want to be strong as I can get. I want to optimize that part of my body. How would I do that?
Well, I'd do a combination of heavy work. When I say heavy work, up from 70 to 85%, maybe touching on 90%. I work up small amount of heavy work. When I say heavy is relative, it's not always heavy. Doesn't mean max, within a certain range. Then it's always backed up with a load of volume of speed. But not only, if you get somebody to pull 100 kilo deadlift, when I say speed, it sounds so easy. Let's pull that deadlift. I want you to pull that deadlift fast. Now, I can get somebody to pull a 200 kilo deadlift. They're pulling it perfect. Nice and steady, they're pulling it perfect. Now I say apply speed. I want you to pull it as fast as you can. All of a sudden, the form goes to crap. They've gone. Now, somebody quoted me years ago, speed is only speed when done in perfect form. And everything's working together at the right time. So for me, when I'm training people, it's a mixture of heavy and speed. But speed starts off not really speed, and it builds into faster as the form gets better. And then all that is backed up with things that help your weaknesses. So by this time, we figured out where you're weak. Is it hamstring? Is it glute? Locking out from the floor? And then we build that into that plan. The weaknesses. So we're not doing loads of fancy. People say, oh, you're doing side raises, are you doing arm? No, why not? I don't need them. They don't help me for what my goals are. That's perfect. And I did very limited amount of exercises, mate. 3 or 4. But them 3 or 4, I could tell everybody what they were doing and why we're doing it. Now, today, people don't do that. They just fluff it up with loads of little things. Oh, that looks really good. My programs on paper don't look anything special. But you come and have a session with me, I guarantee you won't get through the session when you first start. You need a level of conditioning. It just moves at a pace. Everything's perfect. Every deadlift's done the same way. Every squat's done the same way. Tightness, bracing, and everything you do. It becomes a hard session. So for me, building strength, mixture of speed, heavyweight, working on weaknesses, and just building slow. There's nothing wrong with building up a little bit, coming back down, going up a bit further, coming back down. But it's hard today because everybody wants to be there now. You know, they want to be there next week. And we've got guys in our gym who come into the gym and they're injured a little bit, you know, and they're seeing all lads doing a certain level. So they'll try to jump onto the back of them. But instead of doing their own plan, and then eventually they'll get there.
That's incredible what you're saying, because I read, don't remember, I forget the quote, but I said we started not seeing with our eyes and not actually analyzing with our brains, and we take everything in a way of using gadgets or whatever to do that for us. And it's actually what you just said. My eyes are there to observe, my brain is there to analyze and see what I'm going to tweak. And yes, it's not sexy. You know what I mean? It's a boring thing done perfectly over and over and over again. Because I see a lot of people in my practice coming in. It's like, oh, I did that deadlift. I wanted, and I was like, how many times do you deadlift per week? Oh, 3 times. I was like, how many times do you train per week? 6 times. And you said that you did all that with 3 times per week.
Yeah.
So less is more.
Yeah. I mean, I coach quite a lot of people online, and there's not one of my clients who's training more than 4 days a week for strength. I think 3 to 4 days is optimum. But then I've got people who train 2 days a week because it doesn't fit their lifestyle to train 3-4 days a week. They've got busy jobs. So you can cut out the stuff they don't need and put in the basics. You just stick to the basics. I mean, but you just said it, basics are boring for most people. But what they're not seeing is when I'm deadlifting, if I'm doing a light session, I can be putting more speed into it, more effort. When I leave that gym, I'm exhausted. It's not just a light session where it's, he's only pulling 250 a day, 220. Yeah, but everything's drilled, lat tightness, drive with the legs, I'm squatting, knees out, driving, the body position. It's just drilling the technique again. And it's more than just a light session for me. It's a session to learn different things, as we get older and as strengths change, as weaknesses change, you're always adapting, always changing things all the time. And that's the way I do my own training.
It's so important because you've been saying about, posture and movement works. And you see a lot of people out there saying, oh, if you're flexing your back or if you're doing this, doesn't matter. And come on, you can work through pain and all that. And it's really important coming from you saying all that, because first of all, you've done it and you coach people do it, and with much success. What's your position on the rest days? And, 3 days you said you're training. What's the lifestyle on recovery?
Right. Well, what it used to be then, what I did back then when I'm the strongest, I did 3 days. Monday were a pressing day, all my pressing. Wednesday was squat and deadlifts together, because that's the way we competed in powerlifting. We did squat, bench, stand, deadlift. So I like to get used to the volume on a Wednesday. A Thursday, the day after, we did a leg assistance. So everything, hamstring, glute, leg press, everything that helped the squat and deadlifts, we done on a Thursday, the day after. Upper back, grip work. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday, we rest days from the gym. But on the Thursday, we also had a cardio session, a 20-minute hill, quite a fast pace, all-out pace. Saturday, we do that again. Cardio session, just walking on a hill, but walking fast, virtually to the point of a run. It's not just like a stroll. You're working your heart rate, and then I'd be getting 2 to 3 massages a week. But apart from that, I didn't honestly. Back then, at my biggest, I was so big, and I was in a mindset where rest. I used to go to bed on a night, I'd sleep 10 hours, I'd wake up. I'd sleep in an afternoon from 1 till 3 every day. I'd train at 5:30, get home from there, eat, stay up a little bit, eat again, go to bed and repeat. And that's all it was. So a couple of cardio days, but also back then I was working full time. Don't forget, I wasn't a full-time athlete. When I was pulling 1,000 pounds up to them numbers, I was driving a big 7.5 ton wagon, delivering power tools all over West Yorkshire. So we're lifting jacks and things onto the back of a wagon, driving diggers on a wagon, driving it off. I was working 40 hours a week. But that were my conditioning as well, and mobility, because you're bending over, picking things up, lifting them, twisting, turning. So that kept me fit and conditioned without even knowing it, basically. And it helped me a lot. That.
That's incredible because we forget that, right? It's not like you're,
Yeah,
as you said, you've got a life besides the gym.
yeah.
And
But
also,
all my records, I mean, yeah, the biggest deadlifts I ever did, I was working full time. I never, through all them years, I wasn't not working a physical job. I mean, I worked on the doors for a while in the earlier years, but then up until, when I pulled all the big records, I was working power tool driver, driving wagons and stuff like that.
insane.
Yeah.
With your coaching, before you said volume, just to give like an estimate, because I remember like when I used to do like Olympic lifting, we used to say this week it's going to be 20 tons, 25 tons next week, the following week 30, 35, 40, 50, and then slowly going back. How did you measure volume?
What about then?
And how did you back then, and how actually you what you changed now with your athletes and your coaching?
Yeah. Well, back then I went by feel. I didn't really have a plan. I did have a plan, but it was more, I'm very good at knowing how I feel and not overtraining that way. I learned that very young. There was one story when I deadlifted. This is what triggered all this off for me. I pulled 385 in the gym for 3 reps back in the early 20s, so 1991 or something. And then I heard there was a guy called Gary Heisen, the biggest deadlifter of all time, was pulling 419. And I'd heard Gary just done 385 for 2. And I was competing against him at the show coming up. So I thought, if I pull 385 for 3, that means I'm stronger than him. Now, I knew nothing about speed, how you pull the bar. I just thought, if I pull more reps than him, I'm stronger. So I did. Later finding out that Gary's 2 reps were comfortable and my 3 reps, my nose were bleeding. I had nothing else left. With Gary could have done another 3 reps probably with his, but I couldn't. So I went to the competition. He just missed 420 deadlift for the biggest all-time deadlift, and I only pulled 380. I pulled less than I pulled in training for 3 reps, and I couldn't get my head around it. I couldn't understand why. So I was doing strongman at this point as well in the early 20s. So I did a strongman show up in Scotland, and apart from that, I didn't train for 5 weeks. I did nothing for 5 weeks. I got a bit fed up and just thought, I don't know. I was lost a little bit back then. I didn't know what to do. So I had 5 weeks of training, did a strongman comp, which with no back involved. Back then, the stones were up to 140 kilos.
Oh, wow.
So there were no big back events. So my back were getting a good rest all this time. Come back to the gym one night, wasn't going to train. The lads were deadlifting. I thought, I'll join in. I got my bell out of the car and started deadlifting. And I remember putting 60 kilo, and we went up in 20 kilo plates. So from 60 to 100 to 140 to 180. All felt easy. 220, 260, 300 all felt easy. 340 moved so easily. I was shocked, and lads were looking, thinking, okay, what's he going to do next? I said, put 380 on. And I pulled 380 on, and it flew. It flew. And my best deadlift to this point was 390. Now, I looked at Brian Reynolds, which is one of the guys who got me into powerlifting, who was an IPF world champion in 92, 93. And he knew the numbers inside out. I said, well, what do you think I should go next? He goes, 900. I said, what's 900? I had no idea what 900 pounds were. He goes, 410. So I put 410 on it. And, you're young. I didn't understand weights.
Just put it on.
Yeah, I just put it on. It didn't mean up to me. Pull 900. I pulled 900. And I goes, what's the biggest deadlift ever done? And he goes, 419, Gary Heisey. I said, put 425 on. And he goes, what? Why not 420? No, I don't want to break it. I want to smash it. So 425. And I pulled 425 up to above my knees within a few inches of lockout in my early 20s. And it was like, that has just completely come from nowhere. But I'd had 5 weeks of training. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, okay, so deadlift, it's less, works more for me. Maybe because I'm a lot more explosive than most people, coming from the sprinting background. And
Background shows that your muscles are fast.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not that fast, I don't think you can do that big of a jump. You train a little bit closer to maxes, where I can get away with training a lot lighter. So that was that light bulb moment. And from then on, I started putting 400, 410, and it just started to go up and up and up. But then I went to strongman, so it sort of put a pause, hold to that. And then it picked up again in 2000 and onwards.
It's interesting saying that because, I was talking to Bill Kazmaier. I was reading what Ed Cohen was saying, that less is more, especially on the deadlift. And so about working around the muscles actually that can help you to do that deadlift and being, that
Yeah.
kind of explosiveness to
Yeah.
go as
Yeah.
fast as you can.
Yeah.
And were your mentors, what was your biofeedback? Was it, how did you actually see that coming and have feeling that that's how the way you need to lift?
What do you mean? The speed and the, well, since that day, that's the way. What I'd do then, I'd just try things. So I'd go to a competition and I'd pull 30, 40 kilos less than what I used to do into the comp and see what I hit at the comp. If the comp went well, rather than, because what a lot of people do when they're younger is, if they train at a certain number, say if they're pulling 300 kilos in the gym, then they go to comp and they pull 330. They think, right, if I go 310 in training, I'll pull 340. But my mentality was, let's go 290 in training. Let's go back, make it easier but faster.
Move better.
And then my jump would go higher. And there's a sweet spot. Obviously, it's not going to keep on going like that. Depends on how explosive you are. But I figured that out, that going less, and this is something Jamie Reeves always told me in my early 20s. If you're going to training and going to competitions undertrained, that little bit fresher than anybody else, when that weight gets hard and you have to dig in, you're going to be able to dig in because your body's not going to be tired from all that previous loads. He said, and you're going to pull more than the guy who's next to you who's overtrained for 6 weeks. He said, you'll see them lifters, the pull, it gets hard, the stop, boom, gone. When I pull, I'm pulling, it slows down, I keep on pulling, keeps on moving to lockout. That's freshness, that's all that is. I'm not killing myself in training. But as far as measuring it, I used to go by feel. Honestly, in the early years, because I didn't know enough yet, I was getting little bits of information like this from not doing something for 5 weeks, then pulling that big one, then transferring that to a competition day. But also then in a competition day, I used to squat first and I was just a bench afterwards. So it took me years to figure it out, how it fits with everything else, all my other lifts. And then I applied the same sort of mentality to my squats. But then with squats, I found I needed to handle more weight on your back on a squat. A deadlift, it's just laid on the floor. You're walking up to that bar. There was nothing telling me that's heavy apart from my head. So I thought, if I'm doing less and I'm fresh, and I know my legs are strong, back strong, hamstrings are strong, then I know that bar's going to move. It's just my head telling me it's heavy. Where with a squat, if you're not training heavy, not heavy, but if you're not going within a range of that comp weight, and then you pick that weight up on the day, your initial reaction is shit, this is heavy.
Yeah.
Where if you've trained with deadlifts, you don't get that because it's laid on the ground. It's just your mind telling you that before you walk to it. So it's completely different lifts then too.
And it's also different. It's different, lifting in the gym and lifting with all those people around you, right?
Yeah.
That's something as well that people need to take in consideration because you need to be in that kind of mentality. Of course, you're in the zone, but it's a different environment.
And we were lucky because we had 6 to 8 of the best lifters in the country and some of the best lifters in the world training with me in the team. So we all trained together all the time. So it wasn't just me in the gym with 2 others. It was like 6 to 8 lads all the time. And 90% of them guys were competing at a level, British, European, world level. I mean, Brian went to World Games, IPF champion, Sam a European champion, Dave European, one of the best deadlifters in the world at his 82 kilo class. We had 6 British champions in our club at one time.
Wow.
And 4 of us were traveling abroad, competing internationally. And these are guys you train with day in, day out. So if you're making a mistake or you're slacking, they're quick to pick it up. Where today, I don't think lifters get that today. They don't get the team because of these commercial gyms have set up and see everything's going after work, before work, which is nothing wrong with that. But if you want to be one of the strongest men in the world, you need support. You need a team around you. You need honest opinions, not somebody just got that's amazing, Andy. You don't
Whatever
want that.
The feedback is a gift. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You said before about nutrition and what was, plays a massive role is
back then there was no such word as nutrition. It was anything. But we always covered the base. I never counted calories. I never counted protein. I had protein every meal. I mean, I wasn't lacking in protein. The amount of eggs, 12 egg omelets and stuff, and steak and chicken and cheese. But I'd eat a lot of junk food. See, back then, nutrition wasn't as, with powerlifters who I were around and world level, they're just big men. If you looked at them back then, they're just big men. Yeah, there wasn't like today, the condition they are today. Same with strongmen back then. Look at the strongmen back then. They're a lot bigger, a bit out of shape. Just strong men. But now the strongmen, I look like athletes. They've transformed now. They're different animals now. So it wasn't that we were just fat and out of shape. That's what everybody were like back then. We didn't know any different. I mean, people like Kazmaier come along in the 80s or whatever, and he looked like he looked. But I think that's just a genetic thing as well. I mean, Bill would have been looked like that no matter what he'd have eaten.
Yeah.
He would just start. It's genetic. I competed against a guy called Curtis Leslie. Most muscular guy I've ever seen. He come on that stage in 1992 World Championships, and there were muscles popping out everywhere. You know what I mean? Just crazy. But that's just genetic. And you had me at the side of him, a bit of a pot belly, but lifting so much more than all these guys. So it doesn't matter what you look like back then.
Matter what.
But as far as health and for performance, if I'd have known back then that I know now about diet, my diet would have been better. It would have been better. The only reason why it wasn't because I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
We didn't
have the information back then. It's not like it's now. It's all like Flex magazine, and that was it.
That's it. It was magazine. There was nothing online really like it is now. Just read it in magazines, and the rules with fats back then. 1 minute fats were good, then they were bad. Too much protein. We didn't know. We didn't know what to do when we were younger. We just had food.
What would you change then if you went back and you found the young Andy? What would change with the things you know now?
Yeah, my diet had changed definitely. My training, no, my training were bang on. My training, I said that a few times. I don't think my training. There was nothing wrong with my training. It was perfect. I would have increased the cardio a little bit, and I moved a little bit more. Every day walking. Kept the cardio twice a week. I think that worked for the intense cardio. But it's mainly the diet, to be honest. I wouldn't have eaten so much junk food, chocolate, sweets, takeaways. I just drink beer on a weekend. We're just enjoying his life and lifting big with his friends, and it just happened to turn into being powerlifters.
Because what you just said, like if you see pictures from like 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they were massive. Same thing with rugby, right?
Yeah,
from 2000, 2005 onwards, you see like from that they're starting to become leaner as it went, and you see like people 85, 80 kilos lifting like triple, 3.5 times their weight.
It's crazy now, yeah. And back then you had one or two people like that, stood out. But now, like you say, there's a lot of lighter guys now doing some crazy weights now. I mean, there's the deadlift world record in strongman. I think they're doing well over 410 at 90 kilo, are they? 105s now. It's just ridiculous what they're doing. Yeah.
The amazing world of PEDs.
Of
PEDs, performance enhancing drugs.
All right, okay.
If you don't mind having a chat about that.
No, well, back then, my very first time, so I competed in 1990 when I first started powerlifting at Yorkshire Championships, IPF. Drug free, didn't take anything, didn't know anything, didn't know anybody who could get anything. Just joined gym, coming from rugby, nothing was talked about. I had no idea. My background, my mum and dad were a bus driver, mum looked after kids. So I wasn't around anybody who knew about that. Went to gym, trained, competed IPF, did okay, first show. Then I started to talk in the gym and find out about this. So what I decided is I want to do this. But what I wasn't comfortable with is doing that and competing drug free. Mm-hmm. So what I did, I wrote a letter to IPF BAWLA back then. It was British Weightlifting Association, saying I want to resign from the federation. I'm joining the WPC, which was a non-drug tested thing. So I never competed by using anything, but I did get tested. I got banned in the end because what happened was I said to them, I'm not lifting with you anymore. I'm resigning. I'm going to move over to the WPC. So I moved over, started taking Dynabol, about 5 Dynabol, and 1 shot of Parabolan a week. That's all I took. And then a few weeks later, a drug tester turns up. Even though I'd resigned and I'd not used anything while I lifted with them, but I didn't know you've got to be available for drug tests 6 months after.
Wow.
Up to 6 months after you've resigned, I think, back then. I'm not sure the rules. Anyway, it come to the house, but I wasn't in. I wasn't there. I didn't have a phone. So I come up on the banned list, banned for not taking a drug test. I never failed a drug test. I got banned for not taking a drug test. But I didn't know until I got a letter weeks later, because they couldn't get in touch with me. I'd resigned from the federation. I didn't know we were going to be drug tested because I'd moved over by this point anyway. So that's how I started, with 5 Dynabol, a shot of Parabolan that the gym owner used to do for me. And off back of that, I remember going to a competition and pulling 389 kilos. And it were a junior 125 open world record, junior world record and open world record at the time in the 125s.
Wow.
And then back then, I mean, the lifters back then, there were some crazy lifters back then in the early 90s. They were saying, Andy, take this, take that. And I remember for the Worlds in France in 93, I was 23. I was taking 3 shots of Winstrol a day, propionate every day for 10 days. I can't remember what test I was taking, but just doing everything blind. I had no idea about what to take, how to take it, getting stronger. But they noticed that my eyes were going a bit yellow, jaundice. So they said, you need to be careful, and whatever you're doing, you need to cut it down. So after that, I went to Strongman then. So I tapered everything down for Strongman, because Jamie told me that to be strongman, you need to be able to move and run. And if you're taking that much gear, you can't move around. You're not going to be healthy. You're not going to be cardio fit. So I cut things down a lot then, and I still stayed strong. And it wasn't until 1999 when I did that strongman show and I tore my bicep that I met Brian Baxeldor. And Brian was the man who got hold of me and asked me if he wanted to work with him, because back then he was promoting the powerlifting with his wife Vanessa, promoting the powerlifting.
Yeah.
And they sort of took me under the wing, and I told him what I was taking, and he just shook his head. He says, "You're not going to last me. You're not going to last 5 years, mate." And people think Brian, he was like a genius. He was a genius. He had me coming off for the first time. I was coming off. I was doing very little off season, 4 week on, 3 week off, and I only took over 2,000 milligrams of test for 6 weeks, once a year before the Arnold Classics, for the biggest show of the year. The rest of the time, it were very minimum doses, 4 week on, 2 or 3 week off, 4 week on. So maintaining a level, but always coming off of that 3 weeks that your body settled down. And back then, my bloods were really good. Everything was great. There were no problems.
And
then
Brian
when you went
is a wizard, right?
Yeah, it was. And then when you went on the higher doses, I mean, the trembolones and stuff like that, kids today are using that all year round, stuff like that. I use a tiny amount. And when I'm talking a tiny amount, I'm talking 50 to 100 milligrams 3 times a week. And that's only for 6 weeks, once a year before the Arnold Classic. Any sort of orals, Oxy, we used Oxy, but only for 30 days out from a competition once a year. Okay. So I'd start on three a day for 10 days, then 2 a day. So we go down, not up. Because Brian would say, you're going to put the highest dose in first, then as your body's getting toxic, you come down. And then that way, I used to feel so strong on competition day and not feel, like death. And something else Brian taught me, he said, if you're in a performance sport like this, you cannot feel rough and ill from the drugs. You can't, but a bodybuilder.
How are you going to perform? Yeah,
exactly. Bodybuilders on stage. I mean, I've known Ian Harrison, Jeff, Billy Payne, all these guys, all good bodybuilders. I mean, Ian was a great bodybuilder, he got to Olympia. But I remember Ian doing some cardio with Jeff and his guardian, like a stair climber. And Ian looked amazing. He was getting ready for one of the big shows. I remember going up to Jeff's to see him and walking around the corner. And Ian must have been on this Stairmaster for 5-10 minutes. He couldn't breathe. He could not breathe. And I thought, this guy, to look at him, looks amazing. But he was struggling to do 5-10 minutes on a cardio. So it just opened my eyes a little bit, you know, where you get a guy who looks a little bit fatter, not half the amount of muscle, you could go for hours. I just thought, okay, so that's what Brian taught me, you know, go into a comp, feeling good, start high, taper down. And something else Brian did with drugs, so we'd start on 2,000 milligrams of test. It was 7 weeks out because we'd always fly to America 1 week out. So we're only on it for 6 weeks. It'd start on 2,000, but after 3 weeks, he'd half it to 1,000. So you'd peak up, then you drop it by half. So you're not getting the side effects. But then when you half that, then you're putting in Trenbolone and you're putting in the oxys for the last 30, 40 days. Yeah. So I always went to competitions feeling great, feeling strong. And then lads would leave my gym on a Tuesday with me. I'd go to America a couple of days. They'd fly over later. They'd walk into the room where I was sitting having a drink or some food. They'd look at me and they'd say, wow, you put like 10, 14 pounds on in 3 days. You just look like huge. And that's because the gear started high, come low, my appetite come back. Then I was just fueling up, eating the food went in. Where in the early years, I would go into shows not eating all day because I felt sick, felt so toxic. So that's something Brian really did help me with a lot. And also Brian was always there for the training side of it, you know. If he had any sticking points in training, I'd call him and we'd discuss it. I never had a coach as such. I had nobody writing my training plans out, nothing like that.
Because I wanted to ask you about that, yeah.
Yeah, no, I never did. I had Dave Beattie I'd talked to, the team in Leeds who I trained with, knew me all them years. Brian Batcheldor, we'd run over ideas. Why don't we try this, try that? Why don't you just try doing that? So nobody's saying, Andy, you're going to do this, this, and this. Because I was very good at feeling how things were doing. And I'm not good at taking, I don't want to be being told everything that I need to do. Because I like to go off track a little bit sometimes. But
yeah, if you feel like it, as you said before.
Yeah, sometimes you do. But I wasn't doing it to a point where I was overtraining because I wasn't that lifter. I'd do less than more. But yeah, so it was team. And on the training DVD we did, Brian said it's team Bolton. You know what I mean? No man is an island. It's a team around me. And back then I had a great team around me in every way, every corner. Any problems I could call anybody. Brian could get me anything I wanted, you know, I needed. We tried all sorts. I mean, and where them off-season years, when I was doing 4 week on, 3 week off, what we'd do on the 3 weeks off, 3 weeks off anything, we'd do some creatine, we'd do HCG, and I can't remember something else we did. I can't remember what else we did. But it was something that kept your levels up. You didn't slump, but it kept you strong. Then you went back on again, and my bloods were always good. Blood pressure wasn't really bad back then. It was when I was lifting. Obviously, when you're lifting max weights, it goes up. But in general, I was really healthy. As healthy as you can be, somebody that big, and that's doing what you're doing.
But we had that chat in Britain of like a few months ago. You said, I did a mistake. I thought if I take more at some point, that was like had a toll. Because, you know, you said it's about understanding that I'm getting older.
Yeah.
And
well, that's what happened.
How critical was that for you?
I kept going too long in the end. Because what happens is, in my early years, I mean, before I met Brian, I'd taken, 7 oxys a day. I would have taken anything because I didn't know. Then when I got with Brian, it all changed. And that's when, if you notice, if you look at the timeline, when my lifts got big is when I worked with Brian. And when I was the strongest, and I was coming after shows, I'd have a proper break, come off everything for 8 weeks, let my body settle down. I wasn't in a rush to get back to the gym. I'd have 4 weeks of training sometimes. I'd be like, oh, you get back? No, you don't. I said, you don't need to get back. Strength like that doesn't disappear in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm only peaking once or twice a year at this point. So what the question again? I kept it going too long. So what happened then is, as I got older, when did my kidneys went? My kidneys went, so at 39, I peaked on my deadlift, I pulled 1,008. At 44, I peaked on my bench press. I benched 350 kilos, 0.5. Got biggest bench in Britain, which were a life dream. I never thought I'd bench over 600 pounds because I wasn't known as a bencher. I had long arms and I worked hard for that. And if you look, it took 6 years, 6 years longer to peak than my squat and deadlifted.
Patience.
Yeah, I was patient. Yeah, I knew I had it in me, and I failed it 3, 4, 5 times. Eventually, I got it at the Body Power in 2014. And at that point, I was struggling now because I couldn't walk 50 yards without being out of breath. And I went to a seminar in London. I remember getting off the train with my friend Chris, and I couldn't walk to the tube. I had to stop 3 or 4 times. My back pumped. I was out of breath. I couldn't hold a conversation without being out of breath. I was struggling. I was ready to retire. I was ready to call it a day. I'd had enough. And then Darren called me. Darren called me. That's Darren's fault, this. Darren calls me and says, me and Colin have been talking. We're going to put on a deadlift World Deadlift Championships. The best powerlifter is the best strongman. Are you up for it? And I said, yeah. I'm not going to say no. But by this point, I was 44 years old, you know. I was past my best. I knew that. But I thought, to be around these guys, because I'm a strongman fan and a powerlifting fan. And Eddie Hall were coming up, Hathor were there at this point. So Jonas wasn't there that year. He'd won it previous years. I don't think he was there that year. He said Brian Shaw were coming over, Benedict were there. All the good lifters were there. Misha Clyde, everybody were there. So I thought, just to be around these guys and meet them, because I hadn't met a lot of these guys. I've watched them. Then I've become friends with them all. You know, we met, had a fun time. That year, I don't think I pulled anything because my strap come off. I didn't know how to put the straps on because I was a powerlifter. I never trained with straps. So I put it on the wrong way around. As I pulled it, just come off the bar. And then in 2015, I went back again. But at this point, I was starting to feel ill training. I was getting sick on a morning, funny taste in my mouth, taking the drugs, more drugs. But the reality is I was just getting older. I was getting older. No amount of drugs is going to get you back to that when you're in your 30s to your 40s. It's not going to happen. Taking more. And I remember Dave Beattie come to my room, 2015, we're getting ready to lift. And I had my top off. He always used to come to America with me. We always shared a room. He'd look at me before the Arnolds and go, oh my God, Andy, you're fucking so big and full with chest. You're looking ready. And then he said, he'd come to my room in Leeds in 2014. He looked at me and he said, Andy, what weight are you? Because I'm 158. He said, you know what? You're the same weight as what you were back then. But now you must be 25% fatter. You're not carrying the muscle you was then. And I knew it. And I would try to force it. Anyway, I went there and I pulled 420. It just felt hard. It just felt I wasn't right. And I wasn't feeling well. And I'd made a consultant meeting with my doctor. And I'd gone down to a kidney specialist. I didn't know what kidney ward I was going to. And I'm sat in there in 2015, feeling a bit ill. And then I went there in the morning at 9, 10 o'clock. And then all day went by. 6 o'clock at evening, everybody's gone. There's nobody left, just receptionist. And I'm thinking, they've missed me here. Anyway, doctor comes out. He said, sorry we're taking so long. We're trying to get you a bed. And I'm like, a bed for what? He goes, you need to be admitted. Your kidneys have failed. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, they're working at 3%. He said, you need to put on dialysis straight away, otherwise you could die. You know, I mean, your kidneys are not working at all.
That was a shock. What was your first thought at the point?
I don't know. See, I'm not very emotional like that, stuff like that. I'm pretty good. And I just sat there and I don't know what I thought. I was shocked. Dialysis. I didn't even know what dialysis was. I mean, you don't know much about your kidneys when you don't know. I know everything about kidneys now. I'm an expert in them now. But I'm thinking, kidneys, dialysis, what's that? You put a line in here, comes down, out, and that's where you cleanse your blood on the machine. And I remember that first night in hospital, he's put this line and that hurt. It hurt. Because you're awake, you're putting it in, numbing it, you can feel them tugging. Next day, I'm in my bed, I'm in pain. My wife comes to see me, my daughter. I'm sat there. My daughter didn't like it. She was about 2014. She was only young. She was 6, 7 years old. She started crying. So I've got these lines out of my neck. She didn't like it. And then Dr. Mooney, my first consultant, said to me, you're looking at a transplant. And I thought, kidney transplant, wow. And then it hit me. He's talking about what I need to do, what's going to happen now. And I was in shock. And Dr. Mooney actually told me, he said, you can still train. He said, you can still train. There's not wrong with training. he said, what are you lifting now, though, Andy? He says, I'm not going to guarantee you can lift that again, but there's nothing wrong with trying and staying fit and pulling that sled. Because I just have a pile of sled up with 100 kilos, plus my daughter sitting on top, and drag that. He said, I don't think you'll be dragging that, but you might be able to do a couple of kilos on it. But he didn't want me to give up. Honestly, Dr. Mooney was the best consultant I've had. He never once discouraged me, said stop training. Well, some of them were saying, no, you need to stop this and start cycling and just go completely away from what we're doing, what I knew all my life. But Dr. Mooney was the only one who stuck by me and helped me through it. So yeah, that's how it all started. That was the start of the kidneys, and then going on dialysis, going to the hospital, going on dialysis 3 times a week. But you know what? I had a conversation with one of my friends at the gym, and he said I was a bit down at the beginning because it's getting used to something new. But I've always been good to adapt. You see, I've always been pretty good to adapt. I don't let it sort of faze me too much. And my mate said, you know, with all that effort and all that mindset you had when you pulled 1,000 pounds, he says, turn that to this. So what I did, I said to my wife, I'm going to work. When you go to work, I'm seeing it as a part-time job. So I went Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I left the house at 7, got like about 1:30. I saw it as a part-time job. After work, sandwich bag on my shoulder, my food, went to work, and I'll do this as long as I need to do until I get a transplant.
Great mindset.
And that's the way I approached it, like a job. Just part of my training. Then I'd come home from there, 1:30, go to bed for 2 hours, get up, eat, go to the gym. Kept on training all the way through. Never stopped. Didn't know how strong I was going to be. It turns out I was quite strong for the first 2 years. I mean, I deadlifted 382 in 2017 after being on dialysis for 2 years. So I still had some power. So yeah, I think what caused this though is I don't know if we talked about it when I met you at the British. I'm very addicted.
Yeah.
If I hadn't got into lifting, I could have been a drug addict, alcoholic. Not alcoholic, because I like to drink, but I didn't love drinking. It was more the drugs, the partying. And what I did is, even from my early 20s, I was going out, taking a bit of speed, amphetamine. I remember when I pulled 389, that deadlift world record I told you about in June when I was junior. 2 nights before that, I was out on speed. I didn't go to bed all night. Then the day after, the Saturday before the show, I went to bed and slept all day, had a bit of food, and the day after that, I pulled the world record. I remember coming home 2 nights before, being sick in the flowers downstairs in the house, being sick everywhere, just cramping everywhere,
And then
so dehydrated. And I pulled 389 2 days later.
Insane.
Yeah. But because I got away with it, I thought it was okay. But I've always been very addictive. So if it hasn't been for lifting, I'd have gone a different route, I think. So what I used to do, there was a time on my biggest, strongest lifts when I could get myself, I could not party at all. 12 weeks, 14, I were okay. Then I started falling into a habit of partying after competitions. But I mean, with party, you'd be talking 2 or 3 weeks at a time. Not going home, but every night I'd be drinking up till 5, 6 in the morning. My wife said, "What are you doing?" I just need to release. I wasn't going out. I'm just sitting at home doing it. You know what I mean?
It was your way of actually.
Yeah. It was my way of releasing. I didn't want to be around people. Just did it. Sometimes we did, but not often. It was just my way of releasing, and all that pressure building up to the show like that. So I put pressure on myself. I wanted to perform at a top level. So afterwards, that's the way I released it, and that was for all my years. It happened all the way through. Sometimes more than others. Other times I wouldn't do it, and you see me big lifts. Sometimes performances I had were under par. It's because I've been partying the week before. It happened a lot, It happened a lot. People don't know a lot. Well, my friends knew about it, and some of the guys at gym had always said, "That's Andy, though. You just need to let him do what he does. When he comes back, he'll be focused." And I was focused again. But then as I got older, it became less rest between these times partying, you know what I mean? What I struggled with then is as I got older, into my 40s, and now your strength's not what it was. You're starting to decline. Now, the only way I could have that feeling again of reliving them competitions were getting high. Then I could sit there talking to my friends or in my head, I'm reliving them days in America again. All them people screaming and watching videos, and in your head you think, I can get back there again. I can get back there again. But reality, you can't get back there again. So this is what caused the kidneys, because I was taking uppers, things to sleep, things to kill the pain, Voltarol injections in my shoulder to numb the pain, which ultimately dries out it takes all the water around your organs and puts it where it needs it. High blood pressure for years. And it was just everything. It wasn't one thing. It wasn't even so much the steroids that did it. It was the partying for me. I mean, me and my wife, wife knows everything back now. She knows it. Back then, she didn't know about all the partying. I was keeping it quiet. But she knows everything now. We can laugh and joke about it now. I'm completely, now I'm like the opposite. I'm completely, don't drink, don't do anything now. Everything's completely different now. But that's what caused it, if I'm honest. And I think it comes hand in hand. A lot of these powerlifters, I know for a fact, a lot of top guys, I'm not going to not say anybody, but that they've all got the demons. You see them competing, but there's always got to be a release for these guys. How the release is different for different lifters. Some lifters don't. Some lifters do. The party, the drink, you know.
What would be your advice? Because it was, I think that job with the dialysis and the things with your kidneys was a massive slap in the face of facing reality. And I always say that when you're vulnerable and you're actually speaking to me about that, and with everybody listening, that makes you even greater, because your weights don't define you, right? You did it. You were there. You're still one of the greats. And now you're one of the great coaches, because actually speaking about that, man, that's strong.
Yeah, it happened. You know, what you've done, and that can never be taken away. Kind of achievements. I mean, I honestly think sometimes if I wasn't that addictive, would I have done more in lifting? But then my friends say to me, no, you wouldn't, because the way you was made, when you was focused on something, you would give it everything. And Brian Reynolds, who won IPF Worlds in 92, 93, he said to me, the difference between me and you, Andy, is I were a good lifter. I won the World Championships. You were a great lifter. You were one of the best ever. The difference between me and you, your mentality was different to mine. You would do anything to win, anything, where I wouldn't. He said, I was happy with what I did. But you were a different animal, he says. You'd die trying to do something. And that's the difference between the elite and the ones who are good. It's pushing them boundaries where you know, something could go wrong with this. Because there's no guarantees on any of this. No guarantees. I mean, if you've got a bit of a heart defect that you don't know about,
it will come up.
And you're pushing that level, you can be boom, you're gone. And my doctor's told me that. He says, protein powders, all these things are good. They're not going to kill you. If you've got kidneys with a slight defect and you're pushing these proteins onto it, and it's making, especially the fast acting, the whey proteins that go through your kidneys so fast, make them work. I mean, there's no link between a high protein diet and kidney failure. But if you've got a defected kidney,
GFR
then
goes
it
crazy.
it is going to, and creatine on top of that, and everything else you're doing, your blood pressure, it's a ticking time bomb. And that's what they told me. And it happened to me, you know, but it's one of them things, and I don't mind talking about if it can help somebody else now. I'm not ashamed of what I did. That one little bit, it made me, I'll sit and talk to anybody about what I did, you know, if it helps somebody else.
So I'm keeping the parts of being patient, following the boring path for great. What would be your advice to all those people that are powerlifters now, that want to be one of the greats? What's your advice?
Well, this is something we've got in the gym right now. So we've got a guy in the gym. He deadlifts 200 kilos.
Mm-hmm.
He comes in the other week. He goes, I want to pull 600. I know he laughed at him. 200 to 600. He's 54 years old. He's like, okay. So initial reaction, I said to him, what's your plan? What's your plan to get there? I want to pull 600. Yeah, but there's got to be a plan. What are you going to work on? Well, what's your weaknesses? There's not saying you can't pull that. And it's the same with everybody else out there. But let's set little goals. Let's go 500 pounds first. Or get to 210. Let's go at 220, 230, 240 and build. Get to the ultimate goal. Then when you get within 20 kilos, like I do with a 1,000-pound deadlift, pulling 440 the Arnolds that year, then you know, right, it's there. Until that point, it's just a dream, but there's nothing wrong with having a dream. That's his ultimate goal. And we all sort of initial reaction, we laughed a little bit, took the piss. But I said to him quietly, you know, there's no saying you can't get there, but you need to chip away. And it's the same with everybody today. To be the greatest, I didn't know when I first started lifting, I was going to squat 1,200 pounds and pull 1,000 an 8. I didn't know that. But what I did, competition by competition, got better. If you're getting stronger, you're doing something right. So be patient, get stronger. When you don't get stronger, look at what you're doing, change a little thing, one little thing. Don't change everything, change a little thing. So why isn't that deadlift working? Why isn't that bench going up? Is it technical? Am I overtraining? So I always drop back first before I go up, do more, do less. You could be overtraining. Chances are 9 out of 10 people are overtraining anyway.
Yeah.
So do less. If that kicks it on again, which for me it did, keep on going with that path until it stalls again and change again. And it isn't until you get to like, you know, the big numbers, now you think, oh, okay, now I'm getting invited to these big competitions now. Now I'm against the best in the world now. Now you know you're up there now. But then there's 10 guys been invited to that show. What makes the top guy, and 10th the 10th place? And it's, to me, it's a mindset thing. It's now your training's got to be even more important. Them little fine details, confidence. To me, training the right way builds confidence by not failing weights in training.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you gain confidence, Andy? By not training to max in the gym. But how do you know you could do that, though? Because comp after comp after comp, I'm not missing weights. When I pulled 1,000 pound, I deadlifted for 4 or 5 years and not failed a deadlifting competition. I've never failed a deadlifting training ever in my life.
Consistency.
And to get to that great point, it's genetic.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's genetic. If we all train, you could train perfectly. If you haven't got the genetics, you're only going to get so high. Not everybody can be the best in the world at a sport. The guys who are the ones who got that little bit extra, you know, genetic ability, just a little bit extra than everybody else. I mean, there could be people below them who'll do everything right. Remember, do you follow bodybuilding?
Yeah.
Back in 80s, I mean, when I was younger, I followed a lot of bodybuilding. So you remember Rich Gaspari?
Of course,
versus
yeah.
Versus Lee Haney. Rich were around same time as Lee Haney. Now, Lee Haney won Olympia 7 times. I think Rich never won it. Now, if you watch that battle for gold in 1988 that I watched again and again and again, Rich Gaspari was the hardest trainer. I mean, even Lee Haney said he trains hard. Every detail is covered. Every grain of rice he was weighing on his scale, he did everything perfectly. He come in with way better condition than Lee Haney. But ultimately, Lee Haney was bigger, genetically a bigger man. Now, Rich were never going to win. It doesn't mean he didn't build his to his fullest potential he could, but you're not going to beat a man who's 5 inches taller, wider, just genetically. You're not going to beat him.
Beat that, no.
You can't beat it. And Rich trained as hard as Lee, dieted as hard as him. And it's same with powerlifting. Not everybody's going to be the greatest, but it doesn't mean you can't be. To me, because you're not the greatest, it don't mean you're not great for you.
Yeah.
You can still be the best you can be. You know what I mean? You don't have to be. I mean, just because you're not up there with the best in the world, doesn't mean you're not good. It mean you failed. It doesn't. You haven't failed.
But it's also you had the mindset when you said you started bodybuilding and you said, look, from what I can see, I'm not going to be one of the great.
Yeah.
And you saw you were really good in powerlifting. And that's why I usually say to people is like, change. Like if you're pushing it and you're seeing nothing's coming up, because you can be a St. Bernard's if you want to win the greyhound race. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean?
No, it's never going to happen.
Whatever you do. But people need to actually find a coach to tell them better. And that's a good segue of me. What would an athlete expect from Coach Andy Bolton?
Well, what they get from me, all my athletes, is feedback all the time. They're getting good feedback. Every lift is getting analysed. This needs to change, that needs to change. I start everybody light. You got to be patient. Just give me time, you know. But they're going to get the things right. I need to get a feel for the athlete as well, how they work. The ones who've stayed with me the longer always do better, because you know you can train somebody for 8 weeks. You not always get the formula right in 8 weeks. It ain't enough time. But then you make mistakes to get better. So what you'll get from me, you won't get a cookie cutter program that's the same for everybody. It's me doing your plan, sat at this desk here, doing everybody's individual plan. You're sending me feedback. I'm criticizing lifts. That hips are too high. Drop them hips a bit. Bar closer. You're not bracing hard enough. Every program's given core planks, side planks, bracing, setup. I mean, because setup, you know, and technique is everything from a coach. It's hard. It is hard sometimes online like this. And the guys who live close or within 2 hours drive up and see me. And it's so easy to change things when you're in person with people.
You cannot beat that.
But I remember Bill Crawford when my bench was struggling, 290, 280, 290. And all the guys in America were saying, Andy, you're a bigger bencher than this. You should be much stronger. Yeah, but I don't understand. What do I need to do? And they're all saying you should be better, but nobody's telling you. So with a few coaches, Scott Mendelson, Ryan Kennelly, all back in the day, Sean Latimer, and these guys are natural benchers. So I don't think they really knew what made them strong. So they found it hard to tell me how to get strong. They were telling me what they do. Now, it works for them. Like me telling you how to deadlift, copying my deadlift routine. It won't work for you. And I wouldn't give you my deadlift routine if I were coaching you. Yours will be tailored to you. You'll be doing movements that I don't do, that I don't need, but you will need. You see, it's completely different. Everybody's different. So I went to a guy called Bill Crawford at Metal Militia, who happened to coach a lot of the West Side lifters as well, I heard back then, without anybody knowing. So he transformed my bench press. So from benching 290 at a competition in Britain, 6 months later, going to Ireland and benching 342 kilos. 6 months.
Just minimal.
That's crazy. Yeah. And all he changed were technique things. Setup. Legs. I was using no legs. When I benched 290, I was using no legs.
50 kilos over?
Unbelievable. It was
Crazy.
unbelievable. It was unbelievable. The feet come back for the first time. I arched. Lats come, shoulders come back rather than overextending my shoulders, which led to injuries in early years and me rotator cuff problems. But now there's no shoulder injuries like that. How to set up, squeeze the bar, twist the bar, just some little things. It was nothing major, and the training never really changed that much. A little bit. He had me benching in a shirt more, but he had me benching in a shirt, touching my chest, where a lot of them top guys had me benching in a shirt to boards. Now Bill's idea was, if you compete in bench press and you've got to touch your chest, why are you training bench press to a board in a shirt? Because it's not a competition lift. And what you're going to get good at is you're going to get good at doing half a range.
Half range, yeah.
Yeah. When you go down to the full range, you're going to stop halfway up again because you've only trained half a range. It's either the top half or the bottom half. So he had to do all my benching in a shirt to touch my chest. But then all my raw work, the close grip board work will be all raw, working purely tricep power, but no shirt, no assistance. And that's the way I got from 290 and eventually up to 350.
Wow.
I benched 320 kilos for 3 reps, full touching every chest, every one.
It sounds terrible because people don't. I see that all the time when people. I always say is movement technique is number one, and for mastery you need about 10,000 hours of good quality movement. We know that. So if you go into the gym or if you like every deadlift, you need to be at 100%. And it's really interesting. One of my coaches, Coach Yakovu, he's one of the greatest in Olympic lifting. He drew a circle. And because he always said you need 3 good reps and then stop. You don't need more. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, so he drew a circle, and then he's like, your first rep goes into the center. Yeah. Then if you go away and you go again towards the center, it's going to be a bit close to the center, but it might be a bit out. Every time you do that, it goes further and further away. Yeah. So do less maximum effort, whatever that is for the day.
Yeah.
Be precise in everything.
Yeah.
Lock everything in.
It's right. It's right. Yeah. And you see people warming up. They're warming up and they're just sloppy talking to their friend. But if you see me warm up in any videos, everything's done the same way all the way through. Oh, it's because it's light and it's a warm up. I see it as technique practice. It's fine tuning. Let Pavel work with Pavel. It's greasing the groove. It's just doing it again and again. And that's what I do with all my clients.
Pavel.
They'll work up to a moderately heavy set because they need to feel heavyweight as well. I don't want to, just speed. Not about speed. They've got to feel heavy work. But then I'll do a lot of down sets. Not so much speed at the beginning, but drilling technique. And not only when that technique's drilled, then will increase and then the volume will come down. Because at the beginning, a lot of volume because the weight's out heavy. But when they get it mastered, they can do less. And depending on how powerful a pull they are, how explosive lifter, then we can fine tune it for their needs. Where a lot of the women tend to need more volume. They can train close to the maxes and still recover. Where the bigger men can't do that. The smaller men can do it better. They can recover faster. So it depends on the athlete. And are they drug free? Are they not drug free? Have they got a full time job? Are they working 14 hours a week on a scaffolder, builder, or they're sitting behind a desk? It all plays a part on the volume you give them. But it's like I said before, it's boring and repetitive again and again and again. But that's the secret. That's the formula.
Andy, thank you so much for your time. I'm so looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks in person. People can find you in put your website and your contact details.
Well, I don't have the website anymore because it's not really being used, to be honest.
Okay.
You can get me on any social media. Andy Bolton 1003 on Instagram. Just Andy Bolton Powerlifter on Facebook. I mean, I'm not hard to find.
Oh, I know that. I'm going to put all the info underneath the feed as well. And I'm so looking forward to seeing you in person in a few weeks.
Yeah, it'd be good. Be good show. Be good show.
Thank you.